I've had a good few messages from various individuals asking for my thoughts on the Jeff Horn versus Randall Bailey fight, which took place in Australia. For those who don't know, Jeff Horn, undefeated welterweight prospect that I've covered on the channel before. I was actually able to track down some footage of his fight on the Daily Motion website earlier today. So I was able to watch the fight and come up with a few thoughts. And the first thing to mention is that I understand this was a very, very big fight in Australia. And before we get into the fight, I'll say I think this is actually part of the problem facing prospects in that part of the world. You know, because for Jeff Horn and for his fans, getting Randall Bailey over as an opponent in the welterweight division is a huge, huge statement. You know, I guess Joseph Parker in New Zealand has had similar problems getting opponents over to that part of the world. And I think my concern is that whilst Randall Bailey is definitely a step up, he is quite some way away from the elite, or even really this sort of top 20 of the welterweight division on a global basis. And, you know, I look at these guys fighting in Australia, New Zealand, and I think as they're moving from that prospect stage to contender stage, I genuinely believe it would actually be better for them to be fighting in the States, to be fighting in Europe. You know, there's clearly very passionate fans in that part of the world. Shout out to everyone who watches my videos from Australia or New Zealand. But what I would say is the market over there is just not as big as the market in the States, as the market in England. And as a result, it's going to be hard to attract the really, really, really big names, you know, to go over there. The revenue isn't available to bring these names over. And I think it would be better for Jeff Horn's career if he was maybe throwing himself into the US welterweight mix. So I think it's going to be hard for him to get the level of learning fight he's going to need to become a world champion fighting in Australia. You know, Randall Bailey's a decent name, he's a step up, but let's be honest, this is a guy who was fighting in the 90s, this is a guy in his 40s, this is a guy who isn't fighting in the weight division he initially made his name. And whilst I understand this was a very, very big fight in Australia, on a global basis, in terms of how Jeff Horn's perceived in the UK, or how Jeff Horn's perceived in the US, I don't detect that this fight's even being spoken about, because Jeff Horn isn't really viewed as a relevant name over here, and to be frank, neither is Randall Bailey in the context of the global welterweight division. You know, to be honest, the welterweight division is very US-centric at present. Even in England, you know, our prospects, Kell Brook, who's obviously a world champion, and Amir Khan. Amir Khan's gone out to the US for his fights. Kell Brook, you know, he struggled to get the real elite level opponents, the Danny Garcias, the Keith Thurmans, the Manny Pacquiao's. He struggled to attract those kind of names because they don't want to fight internationally, they want to fight in the US. And fundamentally, I think the problems that Kell Brook is having are going to be even more exacerbated out in Australia for Jeff Horn. So I think that moving forward, he's going to have to, you know, get his passport ready and get some air miles under his belt. But anyway, I've digressed for long enough. Let's break down the fight. Jeff Horn, I thought, put in a mixed performance here. So bear with me on this for a second, because what I'm going to say isn't a simple judgment. I thought Jeff Horn was quite poor in the first round, actually. Watching the first round, I wasn't impressed at all, and I made quite a negative judgment on him. I thought his jab in the first round was non-existent. At times I thought he was getting outworked behind the jab by Randall Bailey in that first round. I thought he was loading up on power punches too much. I thought he was lunging in from distance too much. I thought he was wildly inaccurate, and I thought he was completely unable to deal with an experienced opponent who was giving him angles. You know, what you'll notice in this fight is Jeff Horn would get into the pocket, he wouldn't throw any jab, he'd lunge in slightly recklessly with a power punch, and Bailey would simply duck underneath it. And 4, 5, 6, 7 times in that first round, you'll see Bailey just avoiding the punch, just slipping it, just ducking under it. And a lot of Jeff Horn's aggression was wasted. It was inaccurate. It was a waste of his energy. And because of that, for me, Randall Bailey, who was being outworked in that first round, at times was looking the classier act. Because when he threw punches, they were more meaningful in the hole. So at the end of the first round, I thought Jeff Horn could be in for a real tough night here and may get found out with this step up in class. However, in the second round, I thought he turned it round completely. The second round was an excellent round from Jeff Horn. For a start, he comes out immediately. Now, I don't know if his corner had a chat with him, and if they did, credit to the corner, because it was excellent corner work. Or I don't know if Jeff Horn's just quite an advanced fighter who's able to make adjustments on the fly. Either way, it's impressive. But the second round, you see Jeff Horn come out, and instantaneously, he starts establishing that jab. Like, instantaneously. And when the jab is there, it's an effective weapon. Jeff Horn has a jab. It's a decent jab. It's an effective weapon. And he's got to be very careful, because he was in against a puncher in round 1. A guy who was completely fresh, probably at his most dangerous, with a higher knockout ratio. And he was lunging in a bit recklessly, leading with power shots, when he had this jab in his arsenal all along. And I couldn't understand why he didn't use that straight away in the fight, and why it took him to the second round. Whether that's because he was making an adjustment, or whether because the corner put a rocket up his arse, I don't know. But either way, the jab came out. The other thing Horn started to do, which was very impressive, is, as I discussed, in the first round, Randall Bailey was making Horn look a bit inaccurate and a bit sloppy by continuously just slipping under his punches and coming into range like that. What Horn started to do in the second round was go to the body, which is so key, because a guy like Randall Bailey, so experienced, so slick, he's going to be moving his head. He's going to be giving angles. He's going to be ducking down with his head. Much harder to do that with the body. And you see Jeff Horn even jabbing to the body. See Jeff Horn throwing a hook to the body. I was quite impressed. Instantly he adjusted and turned what I thought was a very disappointing round 1 into a very impressive round 2. And as soon as he made those changes, the results were instantaneous. I believe Bailey gets dropped in the second round. Horn is certainly dominating the action and looking the stronger man in there. And Horn, I don't think he's got crazy knockout power, but he's clearly heavy-handed. You don't want to be getting caught by him. And his nickname, the Hornet, which obviously he's chosen because of his surname, is actually quite apt, because when she's on you, he works. He'll punch to the body 5, 6, 7 times, just bang, bang, bang. He's like a, when you've got like, I don't know, you've got a wasp and it's buzzing around and you can't get it to go away. It's relentless. There is that in his style, actually. So the Hornet is quite an apt nickname in that sense. So what I'm getting at, first round, I was really disappointed. Second round, I was mightily impressed. Then what happens in the third round? You're fighting a guy who's only got one punch. It's a jab and then a big right hand cross, sort of overhand type looping cross. And what does Jeff Horn do? He just doesn't defend. He doesn't keep a tight guard. A guy like that, Randall Bailey, in his 40s, let's be honest, he's got a puncher's chance. But it's quite a good puncher's chance. The guy's got a big knockout ratio. And Bailey catches Horn hard. And Horn is technically knocked down. It's not a knockdown as in he goes down on his back. I think his glove touches. But that's less important. Horn was hurt. You could see his equilibrium was affected. He was unsteady on his feet. He was seemingly a bit... the guy didn't look like he jumped 10 pints, but he looked a bit unsteady. He looked a bit out of it, let's put it that way. And it was sloppy. It was sloppy. Against the guy who's only got one bullet in his arsenal, you'd think, especially when it's a long-range punch that comes from a long distance. Randall Bailey is in his 40s. He doesn't have hand speed like he used to. you'd think Jeff Horn would take more precaution, especially when he'd been looking to utilise that punch from round 1, Bailey. And then I thought Horn, maybe it would have been better if he'd taken a knee. All of this getting up, and just touching a glove. Once he realised it was a standing count of 8, maybe he should have took a knee. He still looked a bit unsteady when the ref called the fight back on. And to be honest, that third round, he was arguably, I'd have liked to have seen him on his back foot a little bit more and taken a bit more time to recover. He was a bit over-eager there, potentially. So yeah, what I'm getting at is this is a tale of mixed proportions. What happens for the rest of the fight is Horn really pushes the pace, puts it on the older man, puts it on the smaller man, launches a relentless attack in the pocket on the body and grinds him down, wears him out. By the 7th round, Bailey's tired, Bailey's, he's lacking. Bailey slips or gets pushed over 3 times on the cams, and you can see him, being worn out and being run down, and the corner pulls him out off the 7. Whether Bailey wanted any more of it or not, I don't know. But what I'm getting at is, Horn grinds it out. Horn shows that he's the younger, stronger, fitter man. He's relentless. He's like the Hornet. He's throwing punch after punch after punch. He's roughing him up in the pocket. He's putting him on his back foot. He's pushing him all over the ring. He's grinding him down in almost a literal sense of the word. And he's showing some good skills in the pocket. But for me, it was a frustrating performance because it was so clear that it could have been a much better performance. The skill set Jeff Horn showed in round 2, he shouldn't have taken till round 2 to start using that skill set, start using that jab, start using that body work. He should have started that from round 1. So whether it was that he was over-eager, nervous, or just sloppy and needed to be told off by his corner, I don't know. But he took unnecessary risk in that first round. The amount of times he was lunging in, he could have got knocked out against an elite level welterweight. Third round, again, whether he was overconfident after such a dominant second round, he takes an absolute haymaker. Had that been Kell Brook, had that been Keith Thurman, that could have been all he wrote. That could have been the end of the fight. He could have been knocked out there. So what I'm getting at is a lot of credit to Jeff Horn. He showed an excellent jab. He showed excellent body work. He showed a good engine. He showed good work in the pocket. Real body punching. There was a lot to like in his performance. But at this stage, based on a performance like that, this is why I talk about him going to America. He needs better learning fights. He needs solid learning fights against the Leonard Bundus, maybe the Luis Calazos, maybe the Devon Alexanders of this world. He needs to take those sort of fights. Jeff Horn's always been vocal about fighting the big names. He's been calling out Amir Khan for years. I understand he wants to fight Jesse Vargas and wants to move to a world title straight away. Let me put it this way. The guy is clearly not ready for a world title. He's got some potential there. I'm not saying he can't get there. But he needs to relocate. He needs to take some serious learning fights. And he needs to put in an improved performance from last night. The tools are evidently there. He's got the tools. He can adapt. He can fight to different styles. He's got strings to his bow. But there's a bit of sloppiness there. The defence could be sounder. The jab could be more regular. The accuracy could be improved. And there's a lot to work on. There's talent, but he needs discipline, education and schooling for that talent to be fulfilled. And if he jumps straight into world title level, I think he'll come up short. Let me know your thoughts. How did you see the fight? Were you impressed by Horn? Do you share my opinion that it was a sort of tale of two different stories? How do you think he'd fare at world title level? Who would you like to see him fight next? Many thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, please do hit the thumbs up button. Help me support the channel and spread it to a wider audience. If you're new, do subscribe so you can check out my other videos. Many thanks for watching.